Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we are focused on a very important topic of do more with less, how to cut costs, shrink ransomware risk, and leverage AI for your file data with Azure and Komprise. And I'm really excited to be here. This is Darren Cunningham, Head of Marketing at Komprise. And I'm here with a couple of real gurus, Steve Moore, who is Information Architect at Komprise, and Hanu Borns, who is the Principal Product Manager at Microsoft. And just a quick background. So Hanu, keep me honest here, but you are a partner manager within the Azure Storage team, running the storage migration program. You have a really interesting background from being a Principal Product Manager since 2022 at Microsoft. Prior to that, HPIT as an EDI and EAI engineer. And then before switching HP Enterprise as a solution architect, before that, I thought this was really, really interesting. You were helping car makers and platforms working on self-driving cars, focusing on their global data collection and ingest needs. So based in Stuttgart, Southern Germany. Welcome, Hanu. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, great. Well, today we are going to cover all things data, all things unstructured data. So we're going to really focus on the unstructured data challenge in the higher education world and the world of research, an area that is, typically, drowning in data. We're going to introduce you to Komprise and the Komprise and Microsoft Azure joint solution, and we're going to talk about the Azure data migration program that Hanu is running. We'll spend a lot of time in demos, so don't worry, it's not all PowerPoint. But we wanted to start by really talking about the world that we're in here when it comes to unstructured data. And for everyone on the call today, you can use the chat panels if you have questions or comments you want to make, anything you'd like to add. But let's just talk about unstructured data. So this is data that does not neatly fit into columns and rows, right? It could be clinical and patient data, EHR notes, medical imaging, medical research and academic data, so trial data, scientific publications, genome, biological data, admin and operations data, so communications, patient feedback, all those things that don't, like as I said, don't fit nicely into columns and rows. And one of our customers, I thought it was an interesting comment a couple of years ago. This gentleman who runs the storage organization said, in our 300 years in operations, this is a higher education institution in the Northeast of the US, no one has ever deleted a file. Nobody even knew what data existed. And this is kind of common. Something we hear a lot about is data hoarding, might be for compliance reasons, but how do you make sure you're not treating all data the same? And so the first step is to manage your unstructured data. So let me ask you folks on the call today, do these challenges sound familiar? We're generating terabytes of research data every day. We can't get to strategic initiatives until we manage our data better. We need a plan to determine which data sets to move to the cloud or move to AI services, often which are in the cloud. We need to improve collaboration between storage and research teams, or we need a policy-based automated approach. We can't treat all data the same. So as your data is growing rapidly, unfortunately, typically your budgets are remaining flat, if not being reduced. So how do you cut and avoid costs while creating data value? And that's really what we're here to talk about. So Komprise was really built to address this problem of unstructured data management. We are a storage agnostic, independent software solution that really is designed to help you see across silos. You'll be able to easily search for the right data and then right place data, right? By being able to know first, then move smart, and we'll talk about some of the use cases today, and then take control of your data so that you are able to make the right decisions and the right investments. That's really, what Komprise was built to do. And, a couple of the main use cases that you're going to see in demonstrations, one is around high performance data migration. So we have all of this data that's been sitting in these on-prem environments. How do we intelligently migrate that data to the cloud, where we can get all the benefits of innovation and really speed, all kinds of overall benefits of having the data in the cloud, being able to take advantage of these cloud native services. So we have a solution that is 25 times faster than some of the free tools, and we'll talk about that today. And then intelligent tiering. So how do we cut costs shrink the ransomware surface area by tiering data to the cold data that hasn't been touched in a year or 2 years, offload that, move that into a lower cost storage environment. And then those tiered files can still be accessed with no change to user or application access, and then automate that with policies. Those are the main use cases. Now, increasingly, we're seeing new use cases around how do I make sure there's no sensitive data that's getting, that could cause a data breach or could, leak into my AI, models. How do we make sure we're reducing the overall cost while protecting this unstructured data by reducing the attack surface in a ransomware initiative? And then how do I automate data workflows with governance? Those are all the themes that are happening around unstructured data management today. Now, I want to bring you in, Hanno. You're focused really on the migration use case at Microsoft. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the program and tell us about the partnership and what you're seeing in your role?
Yeah, thank you. So the first topic to solve is obviously where to migrate, right? So the general recommendation is, whenever you have like the possibility to do like real API integration, to go for blob. If you require applications to use protocols such as SMB, then obviously you would need to go with Azure files. However, if you require like high performance, like very high performance, then there is a couple of additional offerings like Azure NetApp files that you could opt to use, or other partner offerings. Okay, so we're only going to touch Azure services here very briefly. There's lots of guidance on learn.microsoft.com, and there's actually a link below here that you can see to find some guidance on what offering to use. Okay, then here's in this table, and I will not go into details, but it's really a mixture of how much storage, what's your I/O requirements, bandwidth requirements, and latency requirements that make a determination what offering to use. And obviously, there's different price tags to that. And then there is third-party offerings on Azure. If one of these wouldn't fit, then there's multiple Azure solutions from partners that you can actually use. And there's a link below where you could pick them. Okay, so the most imminent point on getting the data over to Azure is apparently the migration, right? So you really want to get the data migrated quickly and have the least impact on your business. And so really you can't afford long time downtime. And typically what we see is that data migrations are poorly planned and they're always underestimated. And in the approach to try to save on cost, often inappropriate tools are selected for that migration scenario and then go wrong, and that only delays product completion. Okay, so it's really important that you're aware of all the options to migrate data, and then can make an educated decision on what tool to use. Okay, so talking about these options, that's one of the things that we would like to do. So the most important thing is deciding whether to go for online or offline. And in general, we could recommend go for online whenever there is sufficient bandwidth. If there is insufficient bandwidth, validate if you couldn't upgrade it, at least for an interim time, and on time, obviously. If there is no option to upgrade, then you could use Databox, which is Microsoft's offering to transport data offline to Azure. Another important aspect is, does the data move while you need to migrate it? Okay, particularly if it's changing, then you really need to go for specialized tools like Komprise. There is tooling, obviously, like RoboCopy, AZCopy, DiskCP that would come to mind. However, the challenge of these is that you need to scan for any kind of errors yourselves. And that's becoming, let's say, very complex. That's where tools like Komprise are really helpful. Okay. Another aspect is whether you would like to tier data during the migration. So if you have cool data in your system and you may have hot data sitting in another pocket, you really don't know what should go where. That's also a topic where Komprise could actually help you with. Okay, so it's really recommended to go with specialized tools in that case. Okay, then
I was just going to ask you a question, just in terms of your role. So if you're a Microsoft customer, I'm a Microsoft customer, when would you get involved with an organization who's trying to make the right choice or looking at different storage tiers or looking at different ways to migrate data? When do you typically get involved?
There is no real rule on that. So it really depends on, very frequently accounts actually have like technical staff that help customers making the right determination. However, at times with very specific use cases, they reach out, and there's internal distribution lists that they can reach out to, seeking guidance of the storage group within Azure. And then we actually help them, number one, on where to migrate, and secondly, on the how to migrate. So that is really for the benefit of the customer.
And have you been surprised by the kinds of questions? Have people thought that it would be easier to move unstructured data? I mean, data migration is not a new topic when it comes to application data migration, but file workloads tend to be more complex. You could be lots of small files. Have you been surprised by the kinds of questions, or are there common questions you get from Microsoft customers?
You see certain patterns. I think one thing that quite frequently happens is that customers, typically migrations start with applications. So you actually look at the migrations in the first place, and then storage comes as an appendix of the applications that you migrate. However, what's frequently overseen is actually like NAS filers that are sitting somewhere within the data center. And then at some point, you're getting close to the data center exit, and there's yet another filer, and that's what needs to get migrated. Then there's some panic, and that's where often we get approached. And we have this customer; they need to exit by day X, and they need to really move fast because otherwise they need to pay penalties because they didn't quit on their contract on time. So that's something where we receive lots of questions around.
Interesting. Yeah, and we'll talk about that in the Komprise demonstration. So, like we said, yet another filer. So that's the importance of having analytics, right? To see what you have across your estate and then make the right decisions time-wise and tool-wise. Interesting. So tell us about the program.
Yeah, so Microsoft is running a program to help customers with the file migration, storage migration in reality, that is, okay? We call it the Azure Storage Migration Program. And what this is really is we're paying selected ISVs like Komprise to migrate net new data over to Azure. It's very easy to use. So you literally just reach out to the partners of Komprise in our case here, and you work with them to migrate the data. And then we offset their license cost through the storage migration program. So there's really no cost incurred to the customer on that. Well, obviously Azure cost, but not for the migration itself. Okay, so why did we pick Komprise for this program? Okay, so it's absolutely the right technology. So they really have the tooling that many customers need to succeed with their migrations. And that's circling back with what I was saying earlier. Like if your data does move while you migrate it, or it's just billions of little files that you would need to migrate, it becomes very cumbersome to get that migrated with unmanaged tools, as we call them, where you really need to find any kind of transmission errors yourselves. And that's where Komprise really shines. Okay, Komprise has proven that their platform is working. So they already migrated multiple petabytes of data over to Azure. So it really works. And it's a great partnership. So we're working with Komprise. They participate in the storage migration program, and it's really easy to use.
Fantastic. Well, great. I'll remind people they can use the panels for questions, but let's jump into what it all looks like with you, Steve, and kind of jump into the demo. But great overview, Hanu. Thank you.
Very exciting. Getting my screen set up here for you, Darren. Thank you so much. And Hanu, thank you for reviewing that. You guys have been an awesome partner. We've enjoyed working with you tremendously.
Thank you.
To that end, as Darren mentioned, Komprise is an all-software solution really focused on unstructured data. And the key fundamentals to that I'll kind of walk through and show you today. I could spend tons of time going over each of these features, but we'll kind of get you an introduction to each of the different little areas. But it all really begins with the who, why, what, and where. Who has what data? Where is it? Why are they keeping it? And what can we do about it? And what we really want to do is start understanding some of those things. And I'll show you how we do that in the plan analysis section. And then also selecting the right destination for it and looking at it. It's not just on performance, but it's also on price. And there's a pricing model that's built into Komprise. So we'll take a look at that very briefly as well. Then once we've decided where we're going to send the data to, we can go into migrations, which is a very common thing, to pick your data up from here and move it over to there. In Komprise, right out of the same interface, you can move right into migrations, manage multiple migrations, and a very resilient enterprise class architecture with reporting and everything else. So I'll show you a little bit of intro into that as well. But there's also the ongoing management, or the opportunity to bring the cost down of keeping storage. And that might be to do some tiering actions as well as some migration actions together. And so I'll show you just a brief introduction of how you can do that and understand your data even deeper and start to classify data and things. And then move on to what we can do with workflows and integration with AI to, once you kind of move your data, quite often the storage administrators don't know what's in the data, and finding those classified files or confidential files, or maybe files that shouldn't be where they are. And so we have a tool to be able to help with that, with workflows and other items too. So I'm going to very quickly touch through all those different areas for you and kind of show you in the interface just how easy it is to use, how intuitive the interface is, that you'll be able to get up and going very quickly in the environment. Now, Komprise itself can be deployed in a singular system data center. We use, again, an all-software solution, these observers to deploy. They can also be deployed in other data centers too. And so we have the ability to do what I call view globally, and we're going to do that through the director console, but yet act locally through these different sites and locations and the systems that we have set up for them. So it gives you a great tool to be able to work across the whole environment for what you have for storage. And a great place to begin is this data stores page. This is where you can come in and add any number of storage systems. And the beauty of Komprise is that we work across all platforms. Anything that's NFS, SMB, or object or S3 protocols, we can connect to, start to collect information on, understand them, bring them into this panel here. So think of this panel as your dashboard to your silos of storage. I've got my Isilon, it's got, its various volumes. Under those volumes would be 20, 30, 40 or more shares that are there, or mount points. And then, from there, we can go on to analyze those mount points and take a look into them. Very similar with NetApp and their clustered environments, their SVMs and their mount points or queue trees within those systems. Windows servers as well. That might be another common platform to take a look at. Once you come along to enable a share, that's when we begin to take a look at the directory tree and start to analyze the space. And that's where you start to see some numbers like these. So you start to see what the capacity is, how much data is actually there, how full that might be, cold data, what the directories and the file count might look like for the environment too. So here's where we can get that overview of the total environment and what we're dealing with, because you wouldn't believe the number of customers we want to just don't have a handle on this yet. So this is a great place to begin for that. And it's not only for on-prem, but you can do this for cloud systems as well. So like in Azure files or in Azure NetApp files, we can view those systems too. Again, they offer standard NFS SMB interfaces. You can also, with our full product, be able to drill into those shares and take a look at the various directories and files within them. You can see things like who's the owners, and you can customize these views too by choosing what columns you'd like to click and view for these. And so now you can come along to the report part and generate custom reports of the information, the data laid out, and your environment, whether we're looking at it at an on-prem level and being able to review reports here in our special columns here, or at the within the storage subsystems themselves. So this provides a great summary review of your environment. But once we start that analysis, we can go even deeper. And what we've done here is we've put together some pre-done charts and graphs to kind of summarize your information, beginning with a heat map for your environment. And that heat map shows how much hot data, warm data, cool data you have in your environment. And as you see, as I mouse over the areas, I can see the capacity amounts and the file counts and things like that. And I can also filter this. I can look at all the shares you've asked Komprise to take a look at, or I could drill down to a specific share in the environment. And the really great thing is that while we're doing that analysis, we start showing you some of the results of this information. So you can see very quickly what's going on in your environment and what you have. You can also start to drill in a little more with some pre-done charts of what kinds of data you have by data types, data sizes. As you can see, big files take most of my space. You can also view these by file count. So maybe videos is taking the big one on size, but it might be documents by file count or something. So you can kind of see and understand that as well. You see here by file size, quite often we see, particularly with Windows environments, small files tend to be the larger numbers of files. And so when you're looking at a migration, moving tons of tiny files is going to be a challenge. But we at Komprise have been through that. We've helped move petabytes into Azure. And so we have things like hypertransfers to get you 20 times robocopy speed. We also do things like understand the network environment before we begin the migrations. So we have an ACE tool that we run that looks at the performance of the source, performance of the destination, the performance of the network. So we can address any issues, any bottlenecks between the two so that we can make sure these migrations go extra fast. So that's a value that Komprise adds above and beyond just providing some software for you that's easy to use. We'll help you understand it, we'll help you get deployed, we'll help you get started, and we'll also make sure the environment's ready to be able to move it quickly too. So you see through these charts and graphs, you can quickly understand who your top owners, who your top stakeholders are, what kinds of data you have, where that data might be by looking at it on specific systems or groups of systems. You can also get a health view of your environment. You can see things like, are there symbolic links? There's some differences in storage systems. So this is a great area to kind of see where some of those differences are, how you might address them. Are there errors in the files or invalid characters and path names and other things that you might want to address before you begin? As we like to say with migrations, it should be 90% preparation and 10% perspiration. Quite often people jump in, start moving data, and then they start discovering these things, and it gets to be a lot of sweat and a lot of work to be able to do them. Once you understand that environment, you start to develop your plan, what shares you want to move together, which ones you want to start with, which ones you want to finish with. You can come right over into the migration tab and just follow through the migration wizard. Select a source, select a destination, select the kinds of schedule you want for your migrations and things, and then you can monitor and manage them through here. So here's where I've got a migration going on from an Isilon system, I think this one was, over to, an Isilon over to a NetApp Azure Files. We're moving some SMB data. And what Komprise does when they do migrations is an iterative approach. So in the first iteration, we're going to move everything, and then we're just going to look for deltas. This way, the end users can keep processing and keep doing their work day to day while we're moving the data over into the environment. And then at an appropriate time, you can schedule that cutover window and come in and select that window and say, I want to start my final iteration and do my check and everything too. Along the way, it's good to be able to monitor these systems, look for any particular errors that might occur. That might be something like somebody's got a file open and somebody might have an actual physical error on the file. So we'll get those addressed. We'll get them addressed in the next iteration. Should there be like an outage, like a mouse chews through a cable or something, no big deal. We'll have a lot of failures during iteration. Next iteration, after everything's been fixed, we'll continue back on its way. And all this is wrapped by reporting and audit logs and everything that we're going to keep for the environment. So you have a full thing for compliance and regulatory to be able to show what was moved, when it was moved, when it might have been deleted, or when it might have been updated within the system itself. And so this can all be controlled through scheduling and through the process that you do for managing. You can pause them, restart them, etc. So it provides a real convenient interface to manage multiple migrations and do it all quite well. And we even scale our migrations. When we see like really large directories, so we grab those extra observer resources and we bring them into play and give great performance to get all this done efficiently for you. And we're always there to answer questions for you along the way as well. So as far as the migration program with Microsoft goes, we provide these components for you. So the data stores, the plan analysis, and being able to look at your environment, and then the migration itself. But then Komprise goes on a little farther with full product. You can go in to actually do your own querying of your data. And what we've done here is we've collected a lot of file metadata, like things like the directory path and file name and access dates and types of files they are and owners and etc. That you can come in here and start to do a custom query, like show me all of the video files that are out there. You won't believe the number of personal video files or TV shows and things like that we find on systems. And once we kind of drilled in, we could even drill into, say, looking at it by a particular location. So again, remember, we can work across multiple data centers, or we could drill into a particular individual system and take a look at the share, or you can even drill deeper to a particular subdirectory that we want to take a look at, or sets of subdirectories, and run our queries on those too, and then see what those files look like for that environment. So this really gives you a lot of great information about your environment. You can start to move into some data classification by going on and adding tag values to those files themselves, come up with your own tag names, tag values. You can save these queries off for your environment and use these queries later for other actions. And so you see here, I've got some queries built up that, for example, I can identify some zombie data or maybe some cold engineering data or things like that. And I can use those queries to do things like we mentioned earlier, of being able to come along and tag files and be able to tier files off. So here's where I can take my filter. I can look at all shares and my specific little group here. For Atlanta, let's take off capacity and performance and look at just this one. With our settings of certain shares and a 6-month window, we see that we can tier off and save money on about 80% of our files. Maybe 6 months is a little aggressive. You know, the odds of somebody accessing a file after a year is less than 1%, believe it or not. So here's where data we could send over to Azure Blob, and then we could send the hot and warm data over to, you know, another system for some tiering and give you a better cost value for the system. And you can see that by putting in your own cost models in here and do that comparison and then see what it's like. You know, keeping data on-prem cost me $796K a year, or having a combination of on-prem and cloud and tiered data, and going to the blob brings it down to 340 plus 670. So there's almost a 50% savings just in being able to tier some of your data. So again, you can see how we can model that ahead of time, see if it's worth doing. Then we can go on to choose our Azure pool and activate this plan. And on a regular weekly basis, it'll go and move that data for you as well. You know, there's one other area that we've had a lot of requests for, and understanding your data, looking at it through the metadata has all been super helpful, but also being able to find files that maybe shouldn't be where they're sitting. So being able to look within the data set itself, that's where workflows comes into play. This is where we can come along and set up a workflow to look at certain systems. So maybe I want to look at this Isilon system here, and then I want to find you know, some particular images or text within the files, or look for PII information, which I'll do here. And then I can come along and select a key, like we're going to select project 2. And what we're going to do here is go in and look inside the files for that kind of information and start to tag that information and be able to collect that for the environment. Now, do I want to run this one time, or do I want to repeat it weekly and have it look for new data as new data comes in and process that data and tag that data? That's all really awesome. And then I can start this workflow to do its processing. And remember this workflow over here with the tiering. We can also do what we call copying and confining. So we can use those tags from those things to take those data sets and maybe put them on another system for more processing. Maybe we've identified those brain scans from the mouse studies, and now you want to look deeper to see what kind of scan, cancer cell issue that is going on. We could take those tags and move those there. Or maybe it's you know, some other, like I said, personal videos and other things that we want to eliminate from our environment because they really don't need to be in corporate. We could do that as well. So we're really bringing together a lot of number of things for you in the environment to manage unstructured data, understanding the who, why, what, and where, being able to move it in bulk with migrations, being able to selectively move it with a scalpel and a magnifying glass with things like workflows and tiering, and then also being able to do things like reporting, like being able to show back to the business unit, you know, this particular group is using this, you know, particular system here to do some processing. How much is that costing them? How much capacity is that? We can generate a report for that and show that to headquarters. So if you do a chargeback or bill back for the environment, we can show that kind of information and show, you know, how much hot, warm, and cold data there is. If you put the pricing information in there, that information will be there as well. So if they do some tiering of things, we can see the price advantages that we're giving them, as well as, you know, who the big owners are, how much data they have, and what's going on in their environment. There's also some other reports, as you saw, like potential duplicates reports. And that's where we're using some of that metadata information to be able to look and identify files that might be copies of each other. And I think I chose the wrong one, leave page. We also have an orphan data report showing data that's been left behind or doesn't have an owner associated with it, and things as well. So just to kind of review real quick, what we're bringing together for you is a great tool to be able to understand your data, the who, why, and what, and where. We have some pre-done templates to kind of show you that information. You can go on to leverage deep analytics to learn even more and do customized querying, customized data classification. We then can go on to do some cost analysis and look at some pricing models to kind of compare. Are we getting the right platform, right data to the right platform? data that has lots of hot data? Are we getting that over to Azure NetApp files? Data with, the warm data or the smaller data sets might go to Azure files, and maybe we get some of the cold data off to Azure Blob for the environment. So let's do that between a combination of migrations and tiering, and then on to look inside the data itself with workflows and reporting. So Darren, I'm going to cut it back over to you. Hopefully that kind of covered everything for you.
Yeah, wow, you covered a lot. Thanks, Steve. That was great. I did get a couple of questions that came in as you're going through that. One is we have users who want to be able to analyze but not move data. Does Komprise allow for different roles?
Yeah, we have some programs for doing analysis, as well as there is a role for deep analytics where a person, like a project team manager, it's good for them to kind of know about their data and see what kind of data they have, so they can have this window of view to be able to do that and manage that space. And then they can have their queries to kind of look at their reports, see what their capacity utilization is like, see where those files are and what they've got for their environment, so they can manage their space better. Or it might be for like an AI person or someone that's using AI to be able to curate and select data, come in and tag this data with what they want to process. So that way we're getting good data over to those tools. And then they can work with the administrators to do that workflow kind of processing, and then come back here and look for those resultant tags. This one has the brain scan. This one has this picture of this building. This one has this person in it. This one has the word classified in it, so maybe we want to put it somewhere and we can see where that one is. So yeah, we do have these kind of roles as well.
Okay. Another question is about scheduling reports. You showed some really, really cool reports. Can I set those up to be delivered on a regular basis?
Yeah, we can come back in here and come along to, you can choose to send the report to email it to yourself rather than getting the PDF that you just saw me download. But I can go on to choose a schedule, and I can select the report, the settings for it, and when I want to have that sent out, and then who I want to send that to. So maybe I have different project leads or department managers and things, and I want to show them, what we're seeing in terms of utilization, capacity amounts, file counts, et cetera, as you saw in the report. So you can push this out on a regular basis as well. And that applies to any of these reports that we have in our system.
Okay. And then we had one more. I mean, I guess this is for me in terms of tiering versus migration. Do you usually work with customers who are needing both? Or is it, hey, I just need to move, lift and shift here to there? And then you might come in and discuss how you could, manage the cold data differently. What is the experience you have, Steve, with kind of the tiering conversation versus just a straight ahead migration project?
Yeah, it's tiering and archiving are kind of underutilized, and we're used to, and we've had such growth in disk drive capacities and stuff that we're used to just forklift replacing one system for another system and just moving the data over. And we've been collecting data all these years, these 10, 15, 20 years or more. And I was talking with one airline. They were like, we've moved it from Novell to Linux to Windows to, we know we've got 20-year-old data. We just don't know where it all is and what it's doing. And we're afraid to get rid of it. And then we've always, had the hope that we'll find some more value in that data one day. Well, that one day is today. So you can now choose that data and see it through the analytics and the information that we have, that this is cold data. And the odds of, like I said, somebody accessing a file is less than 1% once it goes beyond a year. And we typically find 60, 70, 80% of data in an environment is cold data. And that doesn't need to be sitting on MVE storage or SSDs or high-speed spindles and RAMs. Leave that for the hot and important stuff. And you can see how much that is by looking into the heat maps and the pies here that we have. But let's put this colder stuff over on more cost-effective storage. And then we can also, the big stress that end users have is, I lose access to my storage. Well, the beauty of Komprise is we use just a basic Windows shortcut. So they'll still have access to their file. They'll still see their file as they always have. They just double click on that shortcut, which people are used to doing, and they can now gain their file back. And the way Komprise does this is using a native shortcut in Windows, so we don't have to load clients or anything. And then that shortcut will bring the OS to us.
Sorry, I put the architecture slide back up. Do you want to show the transparent move? You'll need to share your screen again. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so go any one of the storage subsystems on the left there, and the end users, again, see their files as they always have. they're just now, what's been moved off is now a shortcut. And when they click that shortcut, that tells the operating system to come to that observer to get the file. And then we'll go down to the blob platform. We'll fetch that file back and deliver it to the end user. You won't rehydrate it. So you don't have to worry about it, consuming space again on your tier 1 storage. We'll deliver it to the end user. Now, if they choose to write it, then yeah, it becomes a hot file again, and it gets written to the storage system and tracked there locally as well. And we'll start monitoring that one over time too. So it makes it very convenient, very easy. We had professors, research scientists, during COVID, they had all of their research data and stuff, and they didn't want to lose access to it, because a lot of work's gone into developing that data. But we started with just 3-year-old data and moved it over. And they are also charged and monitored on their capacity utilization. And when they saw their numbers for storage go down, that could free money for them to put into other research projects and tools and things. They started to realize that they still had access to their data. They were able to work with it. They were able to retrieve it when they needed it and everything. And they came back and said, well, here's even more. So many of them started moving down to the 1-year window for their data and things too. So yeah, it's definitely a very beneficial. It still doesn't change anything for the end user, and the company gets the advantage of having that money open for other things like more security, more tools, more development, more administrators and things.
So just we're kind of getting close to the end here, but Han, I want to ask you just about your different classes and tiers of Azure storage. Are you finding customers have an idea of when to use Blob, when to use Azure Files, when to use Azure NetApp files, or are those regular consultative conversations, and maybe your partners are giving them that kind of guidance? How does that typically happen in an organization? Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. So many customers actually make that determination themselves. I mean, they're crawling through the guides and find it. Often we see that they also consult their cloud solution architects to help them make that determination where to really migrate. I think the challenge is really with legacy applications quite frequently. So you really want to modernize your workloads, and the question is really, when would you modernize, right? Because you need to cut some ties often, and but it's never easy to cut them. So often, let's say, cutting these ties and modernize applications while you migrate makes migrations more complex. So that's why many customers actually opt to just forklift everything over to the cloud and then clean up later. However, once you migrate it, typically or often the real modernization is left behind. Okay, so then often customers don't really get that job done, but it's really crucial to get that done, obviously. But really, seeking guidance is often done by the cloud solution architects, or also system integrators that help customers to get the future landscape painted and also migrated to.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think the key for us is we want to make sure the right data is running on the right tier, the right platform at the right time. So you make sure that you don't have cold data sitting in your more expensive cloud filers, right? And that's really the benefit of having those analytics, and then what we call right placing using either migration or tiering technologies. So we do help customers sometimes with sort of a lifecycle management within the cloud. So you might have some hot data sitting in Azure Files, and then making sure at a certain point it moves to Azure Blob storage to be more cost effective. So anyway, it's just the key point that we made earlier is don't treat all data the same as you go through this journey. And there's a lot of different resources available on the marketplace. You'll find Komprise on there with our full suite. You'll find Komprise on there with our Elastic Data Migration, which is sponsored by Microsoft as part of the Azure migration program. And then we have a lot of different resources on our websites, white papers, things like that. So
yeah, and Darren, if I could interrupt real quick, we have some great videos. If you're not sure about migrations, there's some great ones to, getting started with migrations, things to consider, what to look for. Some great videos on that. Some great videos on, some of the issues that you find in setting up your environment and everything, and white papers on this. And then Azure's got some really great ones as well, describing their products, the choices, and how to get started with Komprise within Azure and doing that migration program for them and stuff too. So some great resources are available for you.
I love it. I know a guy who's helped write a lot of those. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Hannah.
And Hannah. So Hannah, let me give you the kind of last word on the partnership, the program, any guidance you have for folks listening today, just to kind of wrap things up. Put you on the spot. Hannah, you there?
Oh, sorry. Well, no, there's not really much to add. I mean, it's really important that we make the migration as easy as possible for you, and that's why we work with Komprise, and we're trying to put out lots of information out there. What's really matters to us is also learn from customers. Where are their pain points, whatever. So if there is anything, we really encourage you to provide also feedback and come back to us.
Good point. All right. Well, thank you all for attending today. You can see the links here, komprise.com/Azure, and there's lots of information on the Azure Marketplace and on the Azure Learn website. So please take advantage of that and let us know if we can help you. And thank you both for attending and for presenting. Great job.
Thank you, Darren, for putting it on. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.